Was Luke Skywalker aware of his grandmother's grave on Tatooine? That's the question we'll be answering in today's video, covering every detail from both canon and non-canon. So jumping straight in and starting with the burial. Shmi Skywalker is laid to rest in Attack of the Clones. Anakin Skywalker leaves a clear grave marker where his mother is buried. By the time we reach A New Hope, Luke had lived on the moisture farm for the first 2 decades of his life, before embarking on a journey with Obi-Wan Kenobi. But there's never a reference to the fact that Luke knew where his grandmother was buried, or that Shmi Skywalker even existed. So, while the films never specify if Luke knew of Shmi's existence, the non-canon expanded universe brilliantly explores Luke's understanding of Shmi Skywalker. The non-canon source is the 2009's Legends novel A New Hope, The Life of Luke Skywalker. The book depicts a young Skywalker and his early life at the farm. In a particular excerpt from the book, Luke's knowledge of Shmi unfolds on the very grounds for which Shmi is buried. This excerpt covers a very interesting encounter that ultimately leads to a 4-year-old Luke discovering plenty about his grandmother. It's more than Uncle Owen ever intended Luke to discover. So let's get to that excerpt and talk about it. In the scene, when Luke is 4 years old, Sam, a relative, comes to visit the farm on Tatooine. Sam's gaze had drifted to an area beyond the homestead's open pit. "Something's different over there," Beru said. "Where? Didn't you have some supply tanks or some kind of..." Sam stopped talking, and then everyone was silent. Luke noticed the sudden quiet and turned his head to follow the adult's gaze to the southwest. Except for some moisture evaporators in the distance, there was nothing to see but scorched ground. "Sorry, Owen," Sam said, finally breaking the awkward silence. Owen said nothing, but just kept his eyes to the southwest. Sam said, I hope it wasn't vandals." "No," Owen said, "I removed the headstones." Without any further explanation, Owen turned and headed for the entry dome. After he was gone, Beru said, "Please forgive Owen, he just didn't see a need for anyone to know where Shmi was buried." "But he removed all the headstones. His parents and uncle were buried there too, yes?" Beru nodded, and Luke said, "Who's Shmi?" Beru jumped. She hadn't seen Luke in front of the park speeder, and didn't know that he'd been listening. She glanced at Sam, then back at Luke, and said, "Shmi was your grandmother, Luke." "Oh," he said. "Is my father buried here too?" "No," Beru said. "Your father didn't die on Tatooine." "Oh," he said again. Then he looked at Sam and said, "My father was a navigator on a spice freighter. Uncle Owen told me so." So, at least in non-canon, Luke did learn about his grandmother's fate at a young age, despite his uncle's efforts to erase the past. In additional passages within the book, Luke recalls the conversation at a later age, choosing to walk around the graves rather than over them. Meaning Luke was consciously aware of the grave throughout his entire life. It's interesting that Uncle Owen went to such lengths to erase the past, including taking down Shmi Skywalker's grave marker. Having knowledge of who his grandmother was arguably wouldn't have done Luke any damage. It's the truth that lies parallel to her existence that would change the course of Luke's future, if he ever found out, that is. While this moment has now been erased from canon, there is no reason to theorize a similar conversation or discovery did not occur with Luke in modern canon. In the current canon, Luke has a far more detailed understanding of his past. We see in The Last Jedi that Luke has studied the events that transpired in the prequels. So it's likely by the time he reaches adulthood, has an understanding of Anakin's past and life, including the death of his grandmother. After becoming attuned to the Force, there's every chance too that Luke returned to his first home. Prior to rescuing Han Solo in Return of the Jedi, there's every chance Luke took a detour to his first home. Using the Force, Luke reached out, sensing the remains or spirit of Shmi Skywalker, alongside the buried remains of Owen and Beru. All said, 6 close and distant relatives of Luke are buried at the moisture farm. Luke's ability with the Force would no doubt leave him having no issues in sensing both the essence and remains of his family. There's some interesting topics here to discuss in the comments. Do you think in canon, Luke knew about his grandmother's grave? And by removing the grave marker, were Uncle Owen's efforts to hide the past from Luke justifiable or somewhat morbid? Thanks for watching, subscribe for more adventures. Still undecided? There's plenty more to enjoy on the channel. Either way, may the Force be with you.